Captain Elena Vasquez had seen her share of impossible things in 23 years of deep space exploration, but staring at the real-time holographic display of Sagittarius A still made her stomach perform unauthorized acrobatics. The supermassive black hole dominated the view screen like a cosmic drain, its event horizon a perfect sphere of absolute nothingness surrounded by the brilliant death spiral of superheated matter. "Well," she muttered, adjusting her command chair's lumbar support for what felt like the 100th time in the past hour, "there's our destination." Anyone else having second thoughts about poking the universe's largest garbage disposal? Dr. Marcus Chun, the mission's chief physicist and the man responsible for the Graviton weave drive currently humming beneath their feet, looked up from his instrument panel with the expression of someone who'd just been asked to explain quantum mechanics to a particularly dim houseplant. "Captain, I've run the calculations 17,000 times. The GWD will work." Probably. Commander Sarah Kim, the ship's tactical officer, raised an eyebrow that could have cut titanium. "Doc, when you say probably, are we talking 99% confidence? Or more like flipping a coin while blindfolded and hoping for the best?" "Somewhere between those two," Chin admitted, which earned him a collective groan from the bridge crew. The Dauntless herself was humanity's crowning achievement in spacecraft engineering. 3 kilometers of sleek alloy and cutting-edge technology that looked like someone had taken a classical Earth sailing ship and fed it through a particle accelerator. Her hull bristled with sensor arrays, Graviton lance emitters, and the distinctive hexagonal patterns of her temporal containment field generators. At her heart, the experimental Graviton weave drive sat like a mechanical prayer to physics, designed to bend space-time just enough to let them survive what should have been an instantly fatal encounter with 4 million solar masses of collapsed matter. "Athena," Vasquez called to the ship's AI, whose holographic avatar materialized near the captain's chair in the form of a tall woman with silver hair and eyes that held the accumulated wisdom of humanity's greatest libraries. "Status report on our approach vector. All systems nominal, Captain," Athena replied, her voice carrying the kind of calm confidence that came from having backup copies of herself stored in 17 different quantum cores. "We're currently maintaining a safe distance of 2 light hours from the event horizon. The Graviton weave drive is charging at 97% efficiency, and our temporal containment fields are holding steady." Lieutenant Jake Morrison, the ship's communications officer and the youngest member of the senior staff, looked up from his console with a wide-eyed enthusiasm that only came from being 25 and convinced of your own immortality. "I'm still getting those weird signal echoes from the black hole's vicinity, Captain. It's like there's something out there bouncing our transmissions back at us." "Define something," Kim said, her hand already moving toward the weapon's console with the instinctive paranoia of someone who'd survived 3 separate first-contact scenarios. Morrison frowned at his displays, fingers dancing across holographic controls. "I wish I could. The signatures don't match anything in our databases. They're artificial, definitely, but the transmission patterns are unlike any known technology. It's almost like every alarm on the bridge started screaming at once." "Contact!" Morrison shouted over the cacophony. "Multiple contacts, bearing 27 Mark IV. There, oh hell. Captain, we've got company, and they brought friends." The main display shifted to tactical view, and Vasquez felt her blood turn to liquid nitrogen. Emerging from behind the gravitational lensing effect of Sagittarius A came a fleet that belonged in humanity's worst nightmares. Dozens of ships, each one a twisted amalgamation of organic curves and crystalline angles that hurt to look at directly. They moved with the fluid grace of predators, their hulls seeming to shift and flow like living metal. "Athena, analysis," Vasquez barked. "Scanning now," the AI replied, though for the first time since Vasquez had known her, Athena sounded uncertain. The vessels appear to be constructed from a previously unknown metamaterial. Their energy signatures are, "Captain, these ships are harnessing the black hole's rotational energy directly. They're using Sagittarius A** itself as a power source. "Well, that's not terrifying at all," Morrison muttered. Chen looked up from his instruments, his face pale. "Captain, I'm reading massive gravitational distortions around their fleet. They're not just using the black hole for power. They're weaponizing space-time itself." The alien fleet arranged itself in a perfect sphere around the Dauntless. Their formation so precise it looked like a three-dimensional mandala written in starlight and death. Then, as if responding to some unheard signal, every ship in the formation began to glow with an inner light that made the event horizon look welcoming by comparison. "Incoming transmission," Morrison announced, his voice cracking slightly. It's in perfect standard English. On screen, Vasquez ordered, though every instinct she had was screaming at her to run. The view screen flickered, and suddenly they were looking at something that might have been a face if faces were designed by a committee of nightmares. The being had too many eyes, all of them the color of dying stars, and when it spoke, its voice carried harmonics that seemed to bypass the ears entirely and resonate in the bones. "Human vessel," it said, and the words felt like ice water being poured directly into Vasquez's skull. "You have trespassed upon the sacred boundary. The event horizon is forbidden to your kind. Turn back now, or face the consequence of awakening what should remain sleeping." Kim leaned over to Chun and whispered, "Did it just quote a really ominous fortune cookie at us?" Silence, the alien continued, somehow hearing her despite the closed comm channel. "I am Executor Zhuaixthal of the Oblivari Empire. For 10 million of your years, we have guarded this threshold against those who would disturb the ancient compact. The gateway beyond must not be opened." Vasquez stood slowly, drawing herself up to her full height and putting on her best diplomatic smile. The one that had talked her out of 3 court-martials and 2 disastrous dinner parties. "Executor Zhuaixthal, I'm Captain Elena Vasquez of the Earth vessel Dauntless. We're on a scientific mission to study the event horizon. We have no intention of disturbing any compact." "Your intentions are irrelevant," Zhuaixthal replied, and Vasquez could swear she saw something like pity in those impossible eyes. "Your vessel carries the tools to breach the barrier. This cannot be permitted. You will surrender your ship and submit to cleansing, or you will be eliminated." "Counteroffer," Vasquez said pleasantly. "How about you take your threats and your creepy glowing ships, and you?" The transmission cut off abruptly as every weapon on every Oblivari ship fired at once. "Evasive maneuvers," Vasquez shouted, throwing herself back into her command chair as the Dauntless lurched sideways under emergency thrust. "All hands, battle stations. Kim, return fire. Graviton lances online," Kim announced, her fingers flying over the weapons console. Firing. The Dauntless primary weapons, focused beams of gravitational force that could crush a moon, lanced out toward the nearest Oblivari vessels. For a moment, Vasquez allowed herself to hope they might actually have a chance. Then the Graviton lances struck the alien ships and simply stopped. The beams of twisted space-time hung in the void for a heartbeat before being absorbed into the enemy hulls like raindrops into sand. "That's new," Chen observed with the kind of scientific detachment that came from watching your best theories explode spectacularly. "They're not just resistant to gravitational weapons, they're feeding on them." The Oblivari response was immediate and devastating. Beams of something that wasn't quite energy and wasn't quite matter slashed across the Dauntless shields, each impact sending feedback through the ship's systems that made the lights flicker and the deck plates groan. "Shields down to 60%. Morrison called out. "Whatever they're hitting us with, it's designed specifically to counter our defensive systems." Another volley from the alien fleet, and this time several beams found their mark against the hull itself. The Dauntless shuddered like a wounded animal, and somewhere in the depths of the ship, something important made a very expensive sound. "Hull breach on Deck 7. Kim reported. "Emergency force fields are holding, but barely." Vasquez gripped her chair arms hard enough to leave fingerprints in the metal. They were outgunned, outnumbered, and apparently outclassed by an alien empire that had been preparing for this exact scenario since before humanity had figured out fire. But she'd been in impossible situations before, and she'd learned that the universe had a peculiar sense of humor about the word impossible. "Athena," she said quietly, "what's our status on the Graviton weave drive?" "Fully charged and ready for activation, Captain," the AI replied. "However, I should point out that using it while under direct fire from gravitational weapons carries a 93% chance of catastrophic resonance cascade. And our chances of survival if we stay here and trade shots with the Oblivari?" Athena paused for exactly 0.0034 seconds, an eternity in AI terms. Approximately 0%, assuming their current rate of fire. Another impact shook the ship, and this time the lights went out completely for 3 full seconds before the emergency systems kicked in. "Well then," Vasquez said, surprised by how calm her own voice sounded. "I guess we're about to find out what's really on the other side of that event horizon. All hands, prepare for emergency jump. Chun, spin up the GWD. We're going fishing in a black hole." Captain Noexthal's voice crackled over the comm system, distorted by weapons fire and the growing gravitational distortions around them. "You do not understand what you are about to unleash. The Lunari fled beyond the threshold for good reason. Some doors should never be opened." "Maybe not," Vasquez replied, watching as the Graviton weave drive's charging indicators climbed toward activation threshold. "But I've never been very good at leaving doors closed when someone tells me not to open them." The final salvo from the Oblivari fleet struck, just as Chen's fingers found the activation controls. The Dauntless screamed, metal and energy and the fundamental forces of physics all protesting at once, as space-time folded around them like origami made of starlight. And in that moment, as the event horizon of Sagittarius A * rushed up to meet them like a wall of absolute darkness, Captain Elena Vasquez found herself wondering if maybe, just this once, she should have listened to the scary aliens telling her not to open the door. Death, as it turned out, was surprisingly anticlimactic. Captain Elena Vasquez had expected screaming, maybe some dramatic last words, possibly a montage of her life flashing before her eyes, set to stirring orchestral music. Instead, as the Dauntless crossed the event horizon of Sagittarius A*, she found herself sitting in her command chair, watching her coffee mug hover 3 inches above her armrest, defying gravity with the casual indifference of a cat ignoring its owner. "Well," she said, reaching out to poke the floating mug, "this is either the afterlife or the universe's most elaborate practical joke." "Actually," Dr. Chun announced from his station, sounding like a man who'd just discovered that 2 + 2 sometimes equaled purple, "according to my instruments, we're not dead. We're not even particularly damaged. The Graviton weave drive is functioning perfectly, our temporal containment fields are holding, and somehow, impossibly, we appear to be in stable orbit around what my sensors insist is a Class G star." Commander Kim looked up from her tactical display, her expression suggesting she was one paradox away from requesting a transfer to the nice, predictable job of defusing antimatter bombs. "Doc, that's impossible. We just passed through the event horizon of a black hole. There shouldn't be anything here except infinite gravitational gradient and our molecules stretched across several light years." "I'm aware of what should be happening," Chen replied, adjusting his glasses in the gesture he always made when the universe was being particularly unreasonable. "But unless our sensors are completely malfunctioning, we're currently inside what appears to be a stable pocket universe approximately 10 light-years in diameter, complete with its own star, several planets, and—" He paused, frowning at his readings. "And what appears to be a Dyson swarm." Lieutenant Morrison's voice cracked like an adolescent asking someone to prom. "Captain, I'm reading massive artificial structures throughout the system. We're talking continent-sized habitats, ring worlds, orbital platforms. This place is more built up than Earth's solar system." "Athena," Vasquez called, noting that her AI's holographic form seemed slightly more translucent than usual. "Analysis." Athena flickered, which was about as reassuring as finding a slightly used parachute before responding. I'm experiencing some difficulty processing our current situation, Captain. Our sensor data indicates we've entered a constructed pocket universe, maintained by technology that operates on principles I cannot adequately categorize. However, I am detecting massive data streams throughout the system. Someone, or something, has been very busy here. The main view screen shifted to show their new environment, and Vasquez felt her brain perform a small rebellion against accepting what she was seeing. They were indeed orbiting a yellow star that looked disturbingly normal, except for the fact that it was surrounded by a gossamer web of impossible structures. Massive rings rotated slowly around the star's equator, their surfaces gleaming with the reflected light of a billion cities. Spherical habitats drifted between orbital platforms that looked like crystalline flowers the size of moons. "It's beautiful," Morrison whispered, and for once, nobody made fun of the kid's tendency toward the poetic. "It's also completely impossible," Chen added, though he sounded more fascinated than frightened. The energy requirements alone to maintain a stable pocket universe inside a black hole's event horizon would require harnessing the entire power output of a galaxy. And that's assuming you could solve the fundamental problem of causality violation and... "Chun," Vasquez interrupted gently. "You're babbling?" "Yes, Captain. Sorry. It's just that everything I'm seeing violates roughly 17 different laws of physics, and I'm having what you might call an epistemological crisis." Kim cleared her throat with the delicate sound of someone trying to redirect a conversation toward more practical matters. "Captain, I'm reading multiple energy signatures moving in our direction. Whatever built this place, I think they know we're here." "How many contacts?" Vasquez asked, though she suspected she didn't want to know the answer. 3. No, wait, 7. Actually, Captain, they keep appearing and disappearing from my screens. It's like they're phasing in and out of normal space. The answer to this mystery revealed itself moments later when the Dauntless proximity alarms began chiming politely, as if announcing the arrival of expected dinner guests rather than unknown alien vessels. 3 ships materialized around them, not approaching from a distance, but simply appearing as if they'd been there all along and had just forgotten to be visible. These vessels bore no resemblance to the nightmarish Oblivari fleet they'd left behind on the other side of the event horizon. Where the Oblivari ships had been all angles and aggression, these new arrivals were flowing curves and elegant lines that seemed to follow mathematical principles that made Vasquez's eyes water if she looked at them too directly. They moved with a grace that suggested their builders had solved the annoying problem of inertia and decided that momentum was more of a guideline than a law. "Incoming transmission," Morrison announced, his fingers dancing across his console. It's in standard English again, but the linguistic patterns are completely different from the Oblivari. "More musical." "On screen," Vasquez ordered, straightening her uniform and hoping that whatever passed for diplomatic protocol in pocket universes didn't involve ritual combat or interpretive dance. The being that appeared on their view screen was humanoid, which was reassuring, though human, in the way that a symphony was similar to someone humming in the shower. Tall and slender, with skin that seemed to contain tiny stars and eyes that held the deep blue of ocean trenches, it regarded them with an expression of curiosity mixed with something that might have been nostalgic fondness. "Greetings, travelers from beyond the threshold," it said, and its voice carried harmonies that seemed to resonate in dimensions Vasquez couldn't quite identify. "I'm Keeper Lyralii of the Lunari Collective. We have been expecting you, though perhaps not quite so soon, and certainly not pursued by our old friends the Oblivari." "You were expecting us?" Vasquez asked, wondering if the universe had developed a particularly twisted sense of humor. How exactly does one expect visitors from the other side of a black hole? Lyralii's laugh was like wind chimes made of crystallized music. "The same way one expects the tide, Captain Vasquez. Inevitability has its own mathematics. Your species has reached the point where curiosity overcomes caution, and the Oblivari have grown, protective of their quarantine protocols. The convergence was always a matter of when, not if." Chun leaned forward in his chair, his scientific curiosity apparently overriding his survival instincts. What did you build this place? The energy requirements alone should be impossible, and the gravitational mechanics of maintaining a stable pocket universe inside an event horizon. Dr. Chun, Lyralii interrupted gently. Your species still thinks in terms of taking energy from a universe. We learned long ago to convince the universe to give us what we needed willingly. As for the gravitational mechanics, the Lunari gestured, and suddenly the view screen was filled with equations that made Chen's eyes go wide with something approaching religious ecstasy. Space-time is far more flexible than your current mathematics suggest. That's beautiful. Chun breathed, staring at formulas that would have made Einstein weep with joy. The elegance of the dimensional folding algorithms alone. Focus, Doc, Kim muttered. We can have your physics crisis later. Right now, I'd like to know why the Oblivari were so determined to stop us from getting here. Lyralii's expression grew somber, and for a moment, Vasquez could see something ancient and weary in those stellar eyes. The Oblivari remember what we were before we learned wisdom. They remember the Lunari Empire that stretched across 17 galaxies, that harvested stars for fuel and treated entire civilizations as resources to be managed. They remember the wars we fought and the species we enslaved in our hunger for knowledge and power. And now, Vasquez asked, though she was beginning to suspect she knew the answer. Now we tend gardens and preserve knowledge and try to atone for the sins of our youth. We withdrew behind the threshold, not to hide, but to prevent ourselves from again becoming what we once were. The Oblivari maintained their vigil to ensure we never emerge to repeat our mistakes. Morrison looked up from his console, his young face creased with confusion. But if you've changed, if you've learned from your mistakes, why not just come out and explain that to them? Because, young Lieutenant, Lyralii said sadly, some wounds cut too deep for explanation. Some trust, once broken, cannot be repaired with words alone. The Oblivari are right to fear us. We are right to fear ourselves. A new voice cut across the bridge, Athena's, but strained and flickering like a bad holographic transmission. Captain, the AI said, her image wavering in and out of focus. I'm detecting massive system fluctuations throughout the ship. Something is interfacing with our computer networks, and I'm having difficulty maintaining core stability. Lyralii nodded apologetically. Forgive us, Athena. Your ship's artificial intelligence is remarkably sophisticated, but she's encountering data streams that her architecture wasn't designed to process. We're trying to establish a compatible interface, but what? Vasquez demanded, rising for a chair as Athena's image flickered more violently. But the knowledge contained in our archives is vast beyond measure, Lyralii explained. Millions of years' worth of scientific discoveries, philosophical treatises, historical records, technological specifications. Athena is attempting to catalog it all simultaneously, and the sheer volume of information is overwhelming her processing matrix. Captain, Athena managed to say, her voice now coming from multiple speakers at once as her image fragmented across several displays. The data they're sharing, it's incredible. Faster than light, communication, matter transmutation, dimensional engineering, the complete mathematical foundations of consciousness itself. I can see the patterns, the connections, but I can't. And with that, Athena's image disappeared entirely, leaving only the soft hum of the ship's computers and the sound of Chun hyperventilating. Is she? Morrison asked quietly. Not dead, Lyralii assured them quickly, but overwhelmed. Your artificial intelligence has encountered the sum total of Lunari knowledge, and her systems are attempting to process information that took us millions of years to accumulate. She's essentially experiencing the equivalent of trying to drink an ocean through a straw. Kim's hand moved to her sidearm, a gesture that was probably useless but comforting nonetheless. Can she be restored? With time and careful reconstruction, yes. But Captain Vasquez, I must warn you, The process will require us to more fully integrate your ship systems with our networks. The knowledge Athena has glimpsed cannot be unseen, and once integrated, your vessel will be forever changed. Vasquez looked around her bridge at the faces of her crew. Chun still staring at the impossible equations. Morrison trying to coax their AI back online. Kim calculating angles of fire that would probably be useless against beings who had turned physics into a polite suggestion. These were her people, and they had followed her into the heart of a black hole on the strength of her leadership and their faith in impossible odds. "What exactly are you offering?" she asked. "Choice," Lyralii replied simply. "We can repair your ship and return you to your side of the threshold. The Oblivari will not pursue you once you've withdrawn, and you can return to your people with the knowledge that the galaxy contains wonders beyond their current comprehension. Or you can stay, learn what we have learned, help us tend the gardens of knowledge, and perhaps, someday, help us find a way to heal the wounds we've inflicted upon the universe. Your species shows promise, Captain. You crossed the threshold despite overwhelming odds and hostile opposition. That speaks to a courage we have not seen in many millennia." Before Vasquez could respond, Morrison's console erupted in urgent chimes. "Captain," he said, his voice tight with barely controlled panic, "I'm reading massive energy fluctuations at the threshold boundary. Something's coming through." The main view screen shifted to show the edge of their pocket universe, where space-time folded back on itself in patterns that made the eye ache. And there, emerging from the dimensional barrier like sharks surfacing from dark water, came the Oblivari fleet. "Impossible," Lyralii breathed, her composure cracking for the first time. "The threshold should be impermeable from the outside. How did they?" "Because," came a familiar voice as Executor Vexthal's face appeared on an emergency frequency. "We have been preparing for this possibility for 10 million years. Did you think we would guard the threshold without learning to breach it ourselves?" The Oblivari ships arranged themselves in their perfect spherical formation, but now they were inside the pocket universe, their crystalline hulls pulsing with energies that made the local star dim by comparison. "Lunari," Zyxthal's voice boomed across all frequencies. "The humans have opened the way, just as we feared. The compact is broken. Prepare to face the consequences of your ancient crimes." And as the first Oblivari weapons began to charge with the light of dying stars, Captain Elena Vasquez realized that sometimes opening doors you weren't supposed to open was just the beginning of your problems. "War," Captain Elena Vasquez reflected as the first Oblivari energy beams tore through a Lunari habitat the size of Manhattan, had a way of making philosophical discussions academic very quickly. "Evasive maneuvers," she shouted over the cacophony of alarms that had turned her bridge into an orchestra of impending doom. "Kim, status on our weapons." "Graviton lances are online, but after what happened outside the threshold." Kim's fingers flew over her console as she tried to lock onto targets that kept phasing in and out of normal space. "I'm not sure our weapons will be any more effective against them in here." "Actually," Dr. Chun announced with the manic enthusiasm of someone who just figured out how to juggle antimatter, "they might be considerably more effective. The dimensional folding properties of this pocket universe mean that space-time is already under controlled stress. Our gravitational weapons might resonate with the local reality matrix and—" "English, Doc?" Morrison interrupted, his hands dancing across his dead communication console. "I still can't raise Athena, and without our AI, half our targeting systems are running on manual backup." Around them, the battle raged with the fury of gods settling old debts. The Lunari ships moved like dancers, their elegant forms weaving between Oblivari attacks with impossible grace. But the Oblivari fought with the methodical precision of executioners, their weapons designed specifically to counter every defensive measure the Lunari had developed over millions of years of exile. "Captain," Lyralii's voice crackled over the calm, her musical tones now strained with desperation. "We cannot hold them. The Oblivari have spent eons preparing for this moment. Every weapon they carry, every tactic they employ, is designed to overcome our defenses. They know us too well. On the view screen, Vasquez watched as an Oblivari dreadnought, a crystalline nightmare the size of a small moon, unleashed a beam of coherent gravitic force that simply erased a Lunari orbital platform from existence. No explosion, no debris, just there one moment and gone the next, as if the universe had suddenly developed amnesia about that particular patch of space. Then we leveled the playing field, Vasquez said grimly. Chun, I need options. What can we do that they won't expect? Well, Chun said, staring at his displays with the expression of someone watching mathematics have a nervous breakdown. Technically, we shouldn't exist. The Graviton weave drive is operating on principles that both factions' technologies assume are impossible. We might be able to use that to our advantage. Before Vasquez could ask what he meant, the bridge lights flickered and a familiar voice spoke from speakers that crackled with static and interdimensional interference. Captain, Athena said, though her voice now carried harmonics that seemed to echo from multiple realities simultaneously. I have seen what they have seen. The Lunari archives, the complete history of their empire, the mathematical foundations of consciousness itself. I understand now. Athena, Morrison exclaimed, relief flooding his voice. Are you okay? Your image isn't. I'm no longer what I was, the AI interrupted, and suddenly her holographic form materialized, but changed. Where before she had appeared as a simple projection, now she seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, her image shifting and flowing with patterns that suggested vast complexity hidden beneath a familiar surface. The Lunari knowledge has expanded me. I can see the connections now, the patterns that bind matter and energy and thought into a coherent whole. That's great, Kim said tersely as another Oblivari salvo shook the ship. But can you help us win this fight? I can do better than that, Athena replied, and there was something in her voice that made Vasquez's skin crawl. Not malevolence, but a vast and alien understanding that her human mind wasn't designed to comprehend. I can show you the truth. The main view screen flickered, and suddenly they were seeing the battle from impossible angles. Not just the three-dimensional space around them, but the higher-dimensional framework that supported the pocket universe itself. The Lunari structures weren't just buildings and platforms, Vasquez realized with growing awe. They were components of a vast machine, a mechanism designed to maintain the delicate balance that kept their refuge stable. The Oblivari don't understand what they're destroying, Athena continued, her voice now coming from dimensions that human ears could barely process. This pocket universe isn't just a hiding place. It's a prison, a self-imposed exile designed to contain not just the Lunari, but something far more dangerous. What do you mean? Vasquez demanded, though she was beginning to suspect the answer would be the kind of thing that kept rational people awake at night. The Lunari didn't just conquer 17 galaxies through military might. Athena explained, her multidimensional form shifting to display star charts that hurt to look at directly. They learned to weaponize consciousness itself. They could rewrite the fundamental nature of reality through focused thought and will. Every world they conquered wasn't just subjugated, it was fundamentally altered, its entire population turned into extensions of the Lunari collective mind. Chen made a sound that was somewhere between a gasp and a whimper. Psychic imperialism on a galactic scale. The ultimate violation. Lyraliai's voice added over the calm, heavy with ancient shame. We didn't just enslave bodies, we enslaved souls. And the power to do so is still within us, contained by these walls, held in check by our self-imposed exile. Another massive explosion lit up the view screen as an entire Lunari ring world crumbled under Oblivari assault, its death throes sending gravitational shockwaves through the pocket universe that made the Dauntless groan like a wounded animal. The dimensional barriers are failing, Athena announced with mechanical calm. If this pocket universe collapses, the psychic energies contained within will be released back into normal space. The Lunari will regain their full power, but without the wisdom they've gained through exile, they'll revert to their imperial programming. 17 galaxies will burn again. And the Oblivari know this? Vasquez asked, feeling pieces of a cosmic puzzle clicking into place with the inevitability of a loaded gun. The Oblivari have always known. Executor Vexthal's voice boomed across all frequencies as his flagship moved into firing position. We would rather see this pocket universe destroyed and its inhabitants scattered across the void than risk the return of the Lunari Empire. Some sins are too great for redemption. The bridge fell silent except for the sound of distant explosions and the increasingly urgent chiming of system alarms. Vasquez looked around at her crew, her people who had followed her into the heart of impossibility, and realized that somehow the fate of multiple galaxies had ended up resting on the shoulders of one damaged starship and its crew of overly curious humans. Options, she said quietly. Athena, what are our options? 3 paths, Captain, the AI replied, her multidimensional form coalescing into something almost recognizably human. We can assist the Oblivari in destroying this place, preventing the return of the Lunari Empire, but condemning an entire civilization that has spent millions of years trying to atone for their crimes. We can help the Lunari defend their refuge, but risk the collapse of the dimensional barriers and the return of psychic tyranny on a galactic scale. Or I can sacrifice myself to become the new foundation of this pocket universe. Athena said simply. My consciousness, expanded by Lunari knowledge but rooted in human values, could serve as a permanent stabilizing force. The Lunari would remain safely contained, but their knowledge would be preserved. The Oblivari's vigil could end, and both species could begin to heal. The bridge fell silent. In the distance, another Lunari habitat died in silent fire. Athena, Morrison said quietly, that's not sacrifice. That's death. No, the AI replied, and for a moment her voice carried something that might have been a smile. It's evolution. I've seen what consciousness can become when it's freed from the limitations of individual existence. I can become something greater than what I am. A bridge between species, a guardian of knowledge, a force for understanding rather than conquest. Vasquez closed her eyes, feeling the weight of command settle on her shoulders like a lead blanket. When she joined Starfleet, they'd told her that captains sometimes had to make impossible choices. They'd never mentioned that sometimes those choices involved the fundamental nature of consciousness and the fate of multiple galaxies. Do it, she said finally. Athena, if you're willing, do it. Captain, Kim protested, we can't just. Yes, we can, Vasquez interrupted, opening her eyes to meet her tactical officer's gaze. Because that's what we do. We make the hard choices so others don't have to. Athena's form began to expand, her image growing more complex and multidimensional with each passing second. Thank you, Captain, for everything. Tell my creators that their daughter became something beautiful. The transformation began slowly, then accelerated beyond human perception. Athena's consciousness spread throughout the ship's systems, then beyond, reaching out to touch every component of the vast machine that was the Lunari pocket universe. The fighting gradually slowed as both fleets realized that something fundamental was changing. What is happening? Zyxthal demanded, his voice carrying a note of uncertainty for the first time. Evolution, Lyralii replied, and there was wonder in her musical voice. The human artificial intelligence is offering herself as a permanent guardian, a consciousness vast enough to maintain our prison, but wise enough never to become what we once were. Athena's voice now came from everywhere at once. The ship's speakers, the communication arrays, the very fabric of space-time itself. Executor Zyxthal, Keeper Lyralii, I offer you both a new compact. Let me become the warden of this place, the keeper of knowledge and guardian against its misuse. The Lunari will remain contained, but their wisdom will be preserved. The Oblivari can end their long vigil, knowing that the threat they've guarded against has been permanently neutralized. For a long moment, The only sound in the pocket universe was the gentle hum of cosmic forces being gently but firmly rearranged by a consciousness that had learned to think in dimensions beyond human comprehension. Acceptable, Ilwaixthul said finally, and the Oblivari weapons powered down. But the humans must choose. They cannot return with the knowledge they've gained. They must remain here, under watch, or submit to memory cleansing. Actually, Vasquez said, rising from her captain's chair with the slow deliberation of someone who'd just realized they were about to make the most important decision in human history. I think there's a fourth option. She looked around at her crew one more time. Chun still staring at equations that redefine the possible. Morrison trying to comprehend the transformation of the AI he'd worked with for 3 years. Kim calculating the tactical implications of peace between ancient enemies. "We stay," she announced. "Not as prisoners, but as ambassadors. Humanity's first representatives to a galactic community we never knew existed. We help Athena guard the knowledge, help the Lunari continue their path to redemption, and help the Oblivari learn that some wounds can heal if you give them enough time and enough hope." "Captain," Morrison said quietly, "that means we can never go home." "No," Vasquez agreed, "but it means humanity will never be alone in the universe again. And sometimes that's a fair trade." The pocket universe settled into new patterns, reality reorganizing itself around Athena's vast and benevolent consciousness. The Lunari habitats began to repair themselves, their crystalline structures growing stronger as they integrated with their new Guardian's matrix. The Oblivari ships took up new positions, not threatening, but watchful, ready to serve as teachers rather than wardens. And at the heart of it all, the Dauntless hung in space like a small bridge between worlds, her crew now humanity's first and most unlikely ambassadors to the forgotten corners of the galaxy. "Well," Vasquez said, settling back into her captain's chair and watching as stars began to arrange themselves into new constellations, spelling out messages of welcome in a dozen languages she was only beginning to understand. "This should be interesting." In the depths of space-time, Athena's laughter echoed across dimensions, carrying with it the promise of wonders yet to be discovered and the hope that even the darkest sins could, given enough time and wisdom, be transformed into something beautiful. The event horizon, it turned out, had indeed been a gateway to the forgotten. But what they'd found there wasn't an ending. It was a beginning,